All right. Good morning, students. I hope you're all doing well. If I'm audible, please let me know. आवाज आ रही है ना? All right. Thank you. तो चलो. We were talking about the Bhakti movement, and we had already discussed the origin and rise of Bhakti, including the factors responsible for the rise of medieval North Indian Bhakti and the evolution of Bhakti from ancient India. ये दोनों कवर कर लिया ना हमने. Next, we need to talk about Nirguna Bhakti. क्या क्या डिस्कस करेंगे हम? First of all, the emergence of Nirguna Bhakti. Then the ideas of Saint Kabir and Guru Nanak. And then the contributions of Nirguna Bhakti to the field of social reform, religious reform, and cultural development, along with its limitations. ठीक है? So इन सब के बारे में हमें बात करेंगे. First of all, tell me what do you understand by the word, by the term Nirguna Bhakti. क्या होता है ये? ठीक है. Nirguna Bhakti is distinct from Saguna Bhakti. ठीक है. Now both involve devotionalism. भक्ति दोनों में कॉमन है. ठीक है. सगुन का मतलब क्या होता है? It is made up of two root words, sa and gun. Sa means with and gun is attribute or quality. So kind of bhakti which idealizes a god in human form or anthropomorphic form. निर्गुण भक्ति क्या हो गया? Worship of a god without attributes. A god without any definite shape, form, age, sex, gender, etc. One which is timeless, one which cannot be conceived, one which is supreme. Okay? So while the Nirgun sects can be kept in the category of monotheistic, Sagun sects are better placed in the polytheistic sects. ठीक है? अच्छा, अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, जैसे हर जगह पे मोनोथेइज्म में देयर इज एंटी आइडल वर्शिप, एंटी आइडोलेट्री, रिजेक्शन ऑफ आइडल वर्शिप. सगुन भक्ति में आइडल वर्शिप emerges as a main article of worship, main practice. In Nirgun Bhakti, worship of a formless God or shapeless God is emphasized upon. And in Shagun Bhakti, worship of a God with anthropomorphic features is emphasized upon. Now, since monotheistic gods are timeless, तो यहां पे इनकारनेशन रीइनकारनेशन वाला सिस्टम एग्जिस्ट करेगा? नहीं करेगा. रिजेक्ट्स the idea of incarnation and reincarnations. Conversely, what about Sagun Bhakti? यहां पे होगा ये आइडिया? Yes. So अवतारवाद emerges as a major component of Sagun Bhakti. Now, while both of these carry the element of social protest and reform, which of these do you think is more radical when you contextualize it with what came before? पहले ब्राह्मणिकल ऑर्थोडॉक्सी था, तो उसके कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ज्यादा रैडिकल कौन सा होता? सगुन भक्ति और निर्गुण भक्ति? नो, निर्गुण भक्ति. While Sagun Bhakti accepted a compromise between the religious and social equality, तो religious equality को तो okay कर दिया, social equality को reject कर दिया. यहाँ पर it was intensely anti-caste, anti-varna, ठीक है? It was also against all sort of ritualism, since ritualism was the root of all social evils and social divisions in the minds of these socio-religious reformers such as Guru Nanak and Saint Kabir. While the orthodox Brahmanical system emphasized upon the idea of renunciation to attain spiritual salvation, Nirgun Bhakti ने उसको एक सिरे से reject कर दिया. So it was much more radical. Whereas Sagun Bhakti could not be termed as radical, rather it should be simply called reformative. ठीक है? तो बेसिक डिस्टिंक्शन क्लियर हुआ है दोनों के बीच में. नाउ व्हेन इट कम्स टू द इमर्जेंस of Nirgun Bhakti, its earliest beginnings in North India can be traced to roughly the 12th century with the emergence of the Nath Panthis. ठीक है? क्या स्पेशलिटी है नाथ पंथीस का? Although they accepted Shiva as the supreme god, they worshipped Shiva in which form? in the linga form, in the anthropomorphic form, or in the shapeless form? निर्गुण भक्ति है तो shapeless form में. Accepted Shiva in the shapeless form as the supreme god. ठीक है. Secondly, ये जितने भी नाथास थे, especially the earlier ones, what was their social background? Were they Brahmins or did they come from the lower castes? They largely came from the lower castes. So would they be in favor of the caste system or would they be opposed to it? They were vehemently opposed. To the caste system. तो अब बताओ कि if they are vehemently opposed to the caste system, are they liable to be in favor of the Brahmanical order and the Brahmanical practices, or are they going to be opposed to them as well? Opposed to those as well, right? A major article of the Brahmanical faith was the performance of rituals, pilgrimages, etc. तो इन सारी practices को ये accept करेंगे या reject कर देंगे? Reject कर देंगे, right? So they also rejected Brahmanical ritualism characterized by idol worship, pilgrimage, the concept of dan and dakshina, the practice of sacrifices, etc. ठीक है. Now if they have rejected all of these things, तो इसकी जगह पे कोई चीज इंट्रोड्यूस करेंगे in order to convince their followers that the path of salvation is also open to them. Yes. और क्या इंट्रोड्यूस करेंगे? They introduced the concept of inner realization as the path to salvation. Inner realization as the path to salvation. So they took the agency of attaining salvation away from the Brahmin priests and gave it to the individual. So they made bhakti an individual pursuit. इसका significance में ये है, ठीक है? And how to attain this inner realization? By a series of meditative and yogic practices. तो आपने सिद्धा योगा सुना होगा, नाथ योगी सुने होंगे, राइट? वो क्या करते हैं? दिन भर मेडिटेशन करते हैं, योगा प्रैक्टिस करते हैं in order to uplift their spiritual level to that of Shiva, right? So that there is no distinction left between them any longer. Introduce the concept of inner realization as the path to salvation through meditation and yogic exercises. And finally, since they were not dependent upon and were in some ways hostile to the Brahmanical orthodoxy, they would make a common alliance with those who were also opposed against Brahmanical orthodoxy, right? And इस समय पर from the 13th and 14th century onwards, several new Sufi sects had started to emerge. तो इनका क्या होगा? Distant association or close association with Sufis? Close association with Sufis. They also pursued a close association with Sufis, especially Sufis of the Chishti silsila. And what is going to be the result of this? Some Sufi practices are going to be adopted by the Nath Panthi yogis, and some Nath Panthi practices are going to be adopted by the Sufi saints. For example, Nizamuddin Aulia introduced the concept of meditation and yogic exercises as part and parcel of Sufi practices. Okay? In fact, the level of yogic perfection that he reached compelled the Nath Panthis to give him the title of Siddha, which means perfection in the नाथ पंथी वोकैबुलरी. ठीक है, तो हाईएस्ट लेवल उन्होंने अटेन कर लिया. सिमिलरली नाथ पंथीज ने क्या लिया सूफीज से? द आइडिया ऑफ इंटेंस लव फॉर गॉड, राइट? जो सूफीज का मिस्टिसिज्म है दैट वाज अडॉप्टेड बाय द नाथ पंथी योगीज. अब मिस्टिसिज्म होता क्या है? जब देखो फीलिंग बहुत इंटेंस होती है लेकिन जो ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ डिजायर होता है वो छुपा हुआ होता है, दैट इज ऑब्सक्योर्ड. That leads to mysticism. Here, because the real form of God is not visible, उसको conceive नहीं किया जा सकता है, so the bhakt has to invent new ways. He has to be very creative in how to imagine the nature of this relationship. तो बाद में जाकर के आप सेंट कबीर, गुरु नानक एंड इवन सूफीज के लिटरेचर में ये देखोगे that they have given the relationship between man and God the same values and the same sentiment and emotion as the relationship between humans. So for example, between a lover and his beloved, जिसमें गॉड को लवर की तरह देखा जाता है, सोल को बिलवेड की तरह देखा जाता है, राइट? सो दिस led to the incorporation of Sufi mysticism into Nirguna Bhakti. ठीक है? And since the Nath Panthis were vehemently opposed to the caste system, they encouraged or they accepted a number of disciples from the lower castes also. And this bred the next generations of Nirguna Bhakti saints. And वो ये सारी की सारी चीजें अपने साथ लेगेसी की तरह लेकर के आगे बढ़ेंगे. सो इमर्जेंस ऑफ निर्गुणा भक्ति में नाथ पंथीज का जो रोल है दैट कुड नॉट बी ignored since they gave a permanent shape to the value system of Nirguna Bhakti. Is this much clear? Sure. Now, तो सबसे पहले इसको लिख लेते हैं फिर उसके बाद आगे बढ़ते हैं. Give the heading Nirguna Bhakti. Nirguna Bhakti. Write down. Nirguna Bhakti refers to the feeling of intense love and devotion the feeling of intense love and devotion towards a supreme, shapeless, timeless, ageless, genderless, and inconceivable God. And inconceivable God. Full stop. Next point. It is distinct from Nirgun Bhakti. It is distinct from Sagun Bhakti. From Sagun Bhakti, which emphasizes upon worship of a God with tangible attributes. With tangible attributes, comma, often anthropomorphic. Often anthropomorphic. Next point. Thus, while Shagun Bhakti can be put in the category of polytheism, comma, Nirgun Bhakti is distinctly monotheistic. Next point is distinctly monotheistic. Next point. While Shagun Bhakti accepts idol worship, comma, Nirgun Bhakti rejects it. Next point. Owing to the timeless nature, owing to the timeless nature of God in Nirgun Bhakti, comma, the concept of incarnation and reincarnation, is not applicable. Full stop. Same point mein. On the other hand, comma, the concept of avatarvad is an essential feature of Nirgun Bhakti. Of Sagun Bhakti. Is an essential feature of Sagun Bhakti. ठीक है ना? नेक्स्ट पॉइंट लिखो. While Shagun Bhakti sought to reform the society, comma, Nirgun Bhakti represented a radical protest against religious orthodoxy and socio-economic divisions and socio-economic divisions. नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो, निर्गुण भक्ति इन नॉर्थ इंडिया, निर्गुण भक्ति इन नॉर्थ इंडिया can be traced to the Nath Panthi sect, to the Nath Panthi sect. सब हेडिंग दो, इमर्जेंस ऑफ निर्गुण भक्ति, इमर्जेंस ऑफ निर्गुण भक्ति. निर्गुण भक्ति, write down point number 1. The roots of Nirgun Bhakti in North India, the roots of Nirgun Bhakti in North India were laid by the Nath Panthi sect. Please repeat Nirgun Bhakti. Which point do you want me to repeat, Prateek? Third point. Thus, while Shagun Bhakti can be put in the category of polytheism, Nirgun Bhakti is distinctly monotheistic. यही वाला? Thus, while Shagun Bhakti can be put in the category of polytheism, Nirgun Bhakti is distinctly monotheistic. Is distinctly monotheistic. हो गया? All right, thank you. हाँ, तो क्या बता रहा था मैं? हाँ, the root of Nirgun Bhakti in North India was laid by the Nath Panthi sect. Write down. Next point. It had the following characteristics. Nath Panthi sect, उसके बाद continue कर दो वही line. From the 12th century onwards. From the 12th century onwards. Next point. It had the following characteristics. Number 1. Worship of Shiva in the shapeless form as the supreme deity or as the supreme god. As the supreme god. Full stop. Number 2. The Nath Panthis comma, many of whom belonged to the lower castes were vehemently opposed to the caste system. Were vehemently opposed to the caste system and accepted disciples and accepted disciples from all social backgrounds. From all social backgrounds. Number 3. They were diametrically opposed. They were diametrically opposed to the orthodox Brahmanical order. Full stop. Thus they naturally rejected Brahmanical ritualism in the form of idol worship. Brahmanical ritualism in the form of idol worship, pilgrimage, the concept of dan and dakshina, and Vedic sacrifices. Comma, as the path to salvation. जो लाइन लिखवाई है एक बार पढ़ के बताओगे प्लीज, तो ठीक है नहीं. They were diametrically opposed to Brahmanical orthodoxy. Full stop. Thus, they naturally rejected Brahmanical ritualism in the form of idol worship, pilgrimages, the concept of dan and dakshina, and Vedic sacrifices as the path to salvation. ठीक है. Full stop. Number 4. As an alternative, comma, they introduced the concept of inner realization as the path to salvation. Full stop. To attain this, comma, the Nath Panthis prescribed meditation and yogic exercises. ठीक है. लास्टली लिखो नंबर 5. From the 14th century onwards, comma, the Nath Panthis formed a close association with the Chishtis, with the Chishti Sufi saints. Full stop. This was the result of their shared rejection of the caste system, comma, reformative zeal and opposition to religious orthodoxy. Opposition to religious orthodoxy. Full stop. Sub points लिखो. As a result, yogic exercises and meditation emerged as an important practice within Sufism. Next subpoint. Conversely, Sufi mysticism characterized by the feeling of intense love and the imagery of Sufi emotions were adopted by the Nath Panthis. So idea is cross cultural exchange हो रहा है, ठीक है? From now, Bhakti is going to start influencing the Sufi movement in India, and conversely, Sufism is also going to start influencing the Bhakti movement in India. Clear? Next main point लिखो. Since the Nath Panthis accepted disciples from all backgrounds, comma, they prepared the future generations of socio-religious reformers in medieval India. Full stop. Thus, the Nath Panthis prepared the ground for the emergence of not only Nirguna Bhakti but even Sagun Bhakti. ठीक है? ये हो गया emergence of Nirguna Bhakti. Take down a question. Trace the emergence of Nirguna Bhakti in North India. Enumerate its distinct characteristics. Full stop. 200 words, 15 marks. दो पार्ट्स में आंसर करना है. पहले बताइए कौन सा वाला डिस्कस करना चाहिए, सेकंड वन और फर्स्ट वन? नहीं, पहले सेकंड वाला जो डिस्टिंक्ट कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स है, वी शुड एन्यूमरेट दोज. दैट इज गोइंग टू गिव अस द बैकग्राउंड टू डिस्कस द इमर्जेंस ऑफ निर्गुण भक्ति. पहले अगर इमर्जेंस ऑफ निर्गुण भक्ति डिस्कस कर लिया तो you will not be able to do justice to it because examiner will not have a clear picture in mind what exactly you are talking about. ठीक है, तो पहले उसका पूरा पिक्चर बताना पड़ेगा कि भाई था क्या ये, एंड देन उसके बाद कैसे इमर्ज हुआ. So first, the features of Nirgun Bhakti, and second, the emergence of Nirgun Bhakti by linking it to the Nath Panthi saints. ठीक है, तो आई एम श्योर इंट्रोडक्शन तो आप लिख लेंगे. कंक्लूजन, I want योर ओपिनियंस एवरीबडी. कंक्लूजन किस नोट पे हमें इसका करना चाहिए, क्या अप्रोप्रिएट नोट होगा? ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स, I'd like you to contribute as well. कंपैरिजन, तो देखो हमने इसके फीचर्स को जो एक्सपैंड किया है, दैट हैज ऑलरेडी बीन डन इन कॉन्ट्रास्ट टू शगुन भक्ति, क्योंकि निर्गुण भक्ति क्या एग्जैक्टली है उसको समझाने के लिए हमने ऑलरेडी वो काम कर चुके हैं जो आप अभी सजेस्ट कर रहे हो, तो वो यहाँ पे अप्रोप्रिएट नहीं होगा. Describing significance, very good. So that should be the note on which we should conclude the significance or impact of Nirgun Bhakti. और क्या चीज हाईलाइट करनी चाहिए? वी हैव ओनली 30 वर्ड्स एट मोस्ट टू राइट द कंक्लूजन, तो एट मोस्ट वी कैन हाईलाइट वन और टू थिंग्स. तो किसको हाईलाइट करना चाहिए यहाँ पे सिग्निफिकेंस या इम्पैक्ट में? That it was Nirgun Bhakti which played the most important role in bringing the grand religious tradition of India to the lower castes, to the marginalized sections. So it affiliated the marginalized sections with India's grand religious tradition. What else? और क्या हाईलाइट कर सकते हैं हम? That its chief exponents, namely Guru Nanak and Saint Kabir, have left an indelible mark on not only India's culture but also India's history. व्हाट एल्स, और क्या बता सकते हैं अबाउट निर्गुण भक्ति? यस, फ्यूजन, जो सिंथेसिस हुआ, इट directly contributed to the creation of India's rich composite culture. So it forms a significant component, main component of India's composite culture. ठीक है? So इसमें से अगर आपको स्पेस मिले, इफ यू कैन क्राफ्ट इट वेल, तो सारे इंक्लूड कर लो, वरना दो इंक्लूड करने की कोशिश करो. ऑलराइट? एंड आंसर राइटिंग में ना यही आपको स्ट्रैटेजी लेकर के जानी होगी, दैट इवन बिफोर यू गो इनटू द एग्जामिनेशन हॉल, जिस भी तरह का क्वेश्चन पॉसिबल हो, यू शुड हैव सम टॉकिंग पॉइंट्स अवेलेबल फॉर ईच एंड एवरी सेक्शन ऑफ योर आंसर. तभी आप वहां पे एग्जामिनेशन में जस्टिस कर पाओगे. अदरवाइज ऐसा लगेगा कि नौसिखिया आ गया है कोई, ही नीड्स फर्दर और दे नीड फर्दर प्रिपरेशन. ठीक है? तो इस तरह से आपको प्रिपेयर करना होगा. तो माय सजेशन इज एट वंस यू गो बैक होम, जो मैं क्लास में क्वेश्चंस देता हूँ, जो आपके प्रीवियस ईयर्स क्वेश्चंस हैं, कोई टेस्ट सीरीज लगाई है आपने, तो वहां पे क्वेश्चंस लीजिए और इसी तरह से केवल उसका स्ट्रक्चर और मेन टॉकिंग पॉइंट्स जो हैं, जो इंट्रोडक्शन में आपको बात करनी चाहिए, जो कंक्लूजन में बात करनी चाहिए, केवल वो प्रिपेयर कर लो. बाकी बीच का जो मीट है, इफ यू हैव डिसाइडेड कि क्या स्ट्रक्चर आपको फॉलो करना है, वो चीजें एवरीथिंग एल्स इज गोइंग टू सिंपली स्लॉट इनटू प्लेस, क्योंकि बार बार रिवीजन करके वो सारा जो इन्फॉर्मेशन है वो आपको याद हो जाएगा. पूरा नहीं याद हो पाया तो 80% चीजें तो याद आ ही जाएंगी ना, तो वो आपका हो जाएगा. मेन चीज ये है, इंट्रोडक्शन कैसे क्राफ्ट करना है, कंक्लूजन कैसे क्राफ्ट करना है, और स्ट्रक्चर क्या होना चाहिए आंसर का. सो दैट इज व्हाट वी नीड टू फोकस अपॉन. क्लियर? तो चलो, ये तो हो गया इमर्जेंस ऑफ निर्गुण भक्ति. देन सम इंपॉर्टेंट निर्गुण भक्ति सेंट्स. कौन कौन? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल सेंट कबीर. क्या बैकग्राउंड है इनका? कहां के रहने वाले थे, पहले तो ये बताओ. बनारस के. ठीक है? अच्छा, व्हाट वाज हिज कास्ट बैकग्राउंड? he belonged to the जुलाहा community, the weaver caste. ठीक? now weaver caste में हुआ क्या था? what rank were they given within the brahmanical caste system? were they considered to be among the high castes or the lower castes? lower castes, untouchables की तरह इनको ट्रीट किया जाता था. as a result, a large section of the weaver community of Banaras had converted to Islam. उनको क्या लगा था कि अब इस्लामिक हो गए, मुस्लिम बन गए, तो वो जो भेदभाव है, जो स्टिग्मा है, दैट इनइक्वालिटी, डिस्क्रिमिनेशन, दैट इज ऑल गोइंग टू एंड. डिड दिस अपीयर टू बी ट्रू? डिड दिस प्रूव टू बी ट्रू? नहीं. they continued facing the same kind of discrimination and social stigma as they had done under the Brahmanical Orthodox caste system. ठीक है? So by the end, the weaver community of Banaras was fed up, frustrated with both Orthodox Hinduism as well as Orthodox Islam. It was in this context that a very famous Ram Bhakti saint appeared at Banaras. कौन थे ये? रामानंद. और रामानंद ने क्या किया? He rejected the discrimination based on caste or social background and started accepting disciples from all backgrounds, irrespective of their caste or religious status. ठीक है? One of those disciples was also Saint Kabir. And तो अब ये बताओ कि Saint Kabir में is he going to be in favor of any kind of religious orthodoxy or is he going to absolutely reject all orthodoxy? ऑर्थोडॉक्सी को रिजेक्ट कर देंगे. रिचुअलिज्म, चाहे वो इस्लामिक रिचुअलिज्म हो चाहे हिंदू रिचुअलिज्म हो, को एक्सेप्ट करेंगे या रिजेक्ट करेंगे? रिजेक्ट करेंगे. जो कास्ट बेस्ड डिस्टिंक्शंस हैं, इज ही गोइंग टू वैलिडेट दोज और रिजेक्ट दोज? रिजेक्ट कर देंगे. Now lower castes, were they educated at that point of time? नहीं. तो कबीर पढ़ना लिखना जानते थे? नहीं जानते थे. Did he have access to religious scriptures? नहीं था. So is he going to accept the infallibility of religious scriptures or reject it? रिजेक्ट कर देंगे. इन इट्स प्लेस वो क्या लेके आएंगे जो निर्गुण भक्ति में था? What is the path to salvation? This inner realization, personal experience. And he is also going to inherit the Sufi idea of mysticism, which has by this point of time percolated into the religious consciousness of North India due to the contribution of the Nath Panthis. Same is going to be exhibited by Ramanand also. Now he exhibited that same kind of God towards Lord Ram. And this feeling of intense love was now to be transferred to a formless, shapeless God by Saint Kabir. तो उनमें उनकी जो राइटिंग्स हैं, उनके जो दोहाज हैं, चाहे वो रामनी हो, चाहे बीजक हो, वहां पे दिस काइंड ऑफ मिस्टिसिज्म, इंटेंस लव without the object of admiration being clear, by imagining the relationship between man and God as the relationship between two lovers who have been distanced from each other, who have parted from each other. उस फॉर्म में ये इमेजिन करेंगे, राइट? ये सारी चीजें देखने के लिए मिलेंगी हमको. अच्छा, देन हाँ, what was his attitude towards Orthodox Hinduism and Orthodox Islam? Was he favorable or hostile? Hostile, right? And तो अब he is going to use satire, व्यंग use करेंगे in order to ridicule both these kinds of orthodoxies. In fact, any kind of religious orthodoxy, right? Is he going to be pro-ritual or anti-ritual? Anti-ritual. Pro-pilgrimage, anti-pilgrimage. एंटी-पिलग्रिमेज. क्या बोला इन्होंने? मन चंगा तो कठौती में गंगा. तो बार बार हरिद्वार बनारस जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. सिंपली नीड टू कीप योर ओन सेल्फ प्योर, ओन सोल प्योर, योर माइंड प्योर. अच्छा, नाउ one problem associated with the caste system was that it placed severe restrictions upon occupation. ठीक है? He was opposed to the caste system. So is he going to encourage the continuation of those restrictions, or is he going to encourage breaching those restrictions? Breaching those restrictions. तो अपने followers को क्या prescribe करेंगे? Irrespective of caste आप अपनी occupation choose करिए, or should you follow the caste rules while observing occupations? Choose whatever you want. एक तो ये चीज करेंगे. Secondly, जो ब्राह्मणिकल ऑर्थोडॉक्सी है, that emphasized upon the idea of renunciation as the path towards salvation. ये क्या बोल रहे हैं? Path towards salvation is inner realization. So by accepting that inner realization is the path towards salvation, he has rejected the idea of renunciation. So what is he going to ask his followers to do? Give up their worldly desires and worldly pursuits only in favor of spiritual pursuits, or to strike a healthy balance between the two? Strike a healthy balance between the two. Even at the height of his popularity, Kabir continued to work as a weaver. In fact, he did that right from his early years up to his ultimate death. तो उन्होंने कभी भी काम करना नहीं छोड़ा, even when he was preaching, right? So these are the new things associated with Kabir. Clear? लिख लें इसको. Write down. Saint Kabir emerged as a prominent exponent of Nirguna Bhakti in North India. Full stop. His bhakti had the following features. Had the following features. Number 1, it rejected religious orthodoxy. It rejected religious orthodoxy. ठीक है, और इसी में ही सब पॉइंट्स करके you can continue writing. A, he was vehemently opposed to the caste system. Vehemently opposed to the caste system. Write down. Kabir inherited. Kabir, हाँ इसी में ही, या फिर ए का भी और फर्दर सब पॉइंट कर लो, इसका और सब पॉइंट कर लो. ठीक है, तो ये इधर ऐसे करके. Kabir inherited a sense of bitterness against caste division from the Nath Panth. From the Nath Panth. Full stop. Next sub point. Simultaneously, the monotheism of Islam may have influenced him as well. May have influenced him as well. Full stop. He asserted that if Allah and Ishwar are one, comma, how can their followers be considered distinct? Be considered distinct. Full stop. Thus, Kabir emphasized upon social as well as religious unity. ठीक है. B, opposed religious ritualism. Opposed religious ritualism. Write down. Kabir had a bitter experience with both Brahmanism and Islam. With both Brahmanism and Islam. Owing to the discrimination felt by him within both towards the weaver caste. Towards the weaver caste. Thus, he challenged and ridiculed both Hindu and Islamic ritualism. Hindu and Islamic ritualism. ठीक है. Number 3. C. Rejected the infallibility of religious scripture. Infallibility of religious scripture. Write down sub point. Kabir was deprived from education. Thus, he could not access religious scripture to support his arguments. Next point. As a result, Kabir had to depend upon his personal experience to act as his spiritual guide. Full stop. Next point. This was the reason for the originality of his ideas. During the medieval age. ठीक है. So, this was his rejection of the religious orthodoxy, his opposition to the caste system, his opposition to religious ritualism, and his rejection of the infallibility of religious scripture. Number 2. Monotheism. Full stop. Kabir represented a unique blend of Nirguna Bhakti and Sufi ideas. Full stop. He emphasized upon the unity of God, claiming that Ram, Rahim, Allah, Ishwar, and Rab are one and the same. Are one and the same. Full stop. Next point. His emphasis on monotheism became the basis. His emphasis on monotheism became the basis for his rejection of idol worship, of his rejection of, became the basis of his rejection of idol worship and religious rituals. Idol worship and religious rituals. ठीक है? Next sub point. Since religious ritualism was the root cause of many social evils, comma, by opposing it, comma, Kabir did not simply remain a religious reformer, but also became a what? Also became a social reformer. ठीक है? थर्ड लिखो. Mysticism. Kabir had inherited the Nath Panthi and Sufi legacy of intense love, towards God. But since Kabir believed in a formless God, comma, the object of his adoration remained shrouded in mystery. Full stop. Next point. When this happens, mysticism appears. Full stop. Kabir, like the Sufis, expresses his love for God to the symbolism of human relations and human emotions. human relations and human emotions. Full stop. Next point. This is also reflected in his famous couplets and other poetic compositions And it is this unique mixture of Kabir that puts him in the overlapping section of Sufi and Bhakti saints. ठीक है, तो हम क्लियरली कबीर को डिस्टिंग्विश नहीं कर सकते हैं कि ये क्या भक्ति थे या फिर सूफी के सेंट थे. कबीर, although he himself imagined him as a bhakt, but he could very easily have fit into the category of Sufi saints also. क्यों? क्योंकि दोनों में ही वो कुछ कॉमन एट्रीब्यूट्स थे जो कबीर की लाइफ में, उनकी आइडियोलॉजी में, उनकी टीचिंग्स में और उनके लिटरेचर में रिफ्लेक्ट होता है. ठीक है, तो दिस वाज सेंट कबीर. नेक्स्ट, समझ में आया ना ये? नेक्स्ट, गुरु नानक. Guru Nanak. Now, Guru Nanak's bhakti was also influenced by the Nath Panth. In Guru Nanak's vocabulary, religious vocabulary, we find the use of terms such as shabd or shabad and shunya. Shunya is emptiness or nothingness and shabad is sound. Right? Now, the same vocabulary we can also find in the teachings of Nath Panthi saints, right? And even in the Sufi saints. सुना है ना वो रॉक स्टार वाला गाना, जब कहीं पे कुछ नहीं था वही थी वही था, कुन फाया कुन. तो वो क्या है? जब कहीं पे कुछ नहीं थी नहीं था, राइट? दैट इज शून्यता. एंड वही था, that is the sound, that is the creator, that is God. When he said let there be light, kun faya kun, there was light, there was life. तो ये आइडिया क्या रिफ्लेक्ट करता है? Belief in monotheism, which stands for an all powerful ubiquitous, timeless and formless creator. One who creates everything from the universe to the planets to the stars to human beings to trees to plants to life. Everything he creates or she creates. As a result of this monotheism, कुछ और चीजें इमर्ज होकर के आती हैं. क्या इमर्ज होकर के आएगा? That since the same being, the same creator deity is responsible for all creation, is his creation distinct or is it the same? Is it the same? So all human beings are the creations of the same creator. So क्या आइडिया होगा यहाँ पे, रिलीजियस पर्टिकुलरिज्म का या फिर रिलीजियस प्लूरलिज्म का? इनफैक्ट वी कैन कॉल इट कैथोलिसिज्म और यूनिवर्सलिज्म. ठीक है. Now, even though all human beings are the same, they consider themselves to be distinct on the basis of religion, language, caste, skin color, gender, etc. What should be the basis of the interaction between them? Should they harm each other? Should they try to kill each other on the basis of these distinctions? Or should human interaction be based on the values of tolerance, brotherhood and love? क्या होना चाहिए? इसी मोनोथिज्म का ये आउटकम होगा. The values of tolerance, universal brotherhood, peaceful coexistence, and love. And these were the values behind Guru Nanak's teachings. Okay? His worldview was also shaped by prevailing social problems. क्या prevailing social problems? Namely, Hindu Muslim hostility, secondly, caste based discrimination, the poor treatment or condition of women. ठीक है? Now, in order to address this problem, Hindu-Muslim unity, he emphasized upon religious tolerance, the idea of universal brotherhood, peaceful coexistence, and love, which was a result of his monotheism. To address the idea of caste-based discrimination, once again, यही वाला concept, monotheism का concept use करेंगे, but some practical solutions were also sought in the form of rejection of the Brahmanical orthodoxy. How? By the rejection of rituals, caste distinctions, idol worship, and infallibility of the Vedas. ठीक है? Now, apart from this, in order to address caste-based discrimination, he also encouraged the strengthening of community bonds. कैसे? बताइए. By introducing the practice of langar, that is community dining. तो सारे लोग एक साथ बैठ करके खाना खाएंगे, which was to be done on the principles of sangat and पंगत. संगत क्या? साथ में रहना, right? That everybody should dine together. And pangat, that they should be treated equally, that they should be made to sit in the same row while getting their food. So it doesn't matter whether the person eating in on the floor is a king or a pauper. All are going to be treated alike, right? And this also dissolved the discrimination to a great degree. He, in fact, went one step further. ये जो अपना नया इन्होंने कम्युनिटी बनाया ऑफ फॉलोअर्स, he gave them a distinct cultural identity. Now, कल्चर के कई सारे एक्सप्रेशन फॉर्म्स हो सकते हैं. कल्चर कई सारी चीजों से शेप हो सकता है. टू मेन थिंग्स विच शेप कल्चर आर लैंग्वेज एंड रिलीजन. ठीक है? Now, in order to give a distinct linguistic identity, Guru Nanak emphasized upon the use of Punjabi language, right? And a distinct religious identity was given to his followership by calling them Sikhs. तो सिक्स के साथ सिखिज्म, एंड सिखिज्म का एक इंस्टीट्यूशनल फ्रेमवर्क भी गुरु नानक ने ले डाउन किया इन द फॉर्म ऑफ द इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ गुरु और ऑफिस ऑफ गुरु. ऑलराइट. गुरुमुखी स्क्रिप्ट पंजाबी लैंग्वेज है, भाषा है, और गुरुमुखी स्क्रिप्ट है, लिपि है. ठीक है? सो बोथ आर डिस्टिंक्ट. इतना क्लियर है? अच्छा. नाउ आफ्टर Guru Nanak, further developments took place which strengthened the Sikh religious community even further. For example, the fifth Sikh Guru, Guru Arjan Dev, gave a textual favor to the religion by composing the Adi Granth, later known as the Guru Granth Sahib. Then, as the egalitarian Sikh community of Punjab came into contact with the oppressive feudal order of the Mughals, there was also the engendering of political conflict. And through this conflict, क्या emerge होगा? A Sikh military institution, the Khalsa, Guru Gobind Singh ने बनाया, right? And finally, after the 10th Sikh Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, declared that from now on the institution of Guru shall no longer exist and the Guru Granth Sahib shall be the perpetual Guru. So, reason दिख रहा है that why the followers of Guru Nanak could carve out their own political state and political identity and not anybody else. So it was because of these characteristics. Okay? So Guru Nanak had succeeded in creating an egalitarian, religiously and linguistically distinct community of followers which found itself at odds with oppressive feudal foreign orders, right? And in this sense, they were able to reassert their own political bearings or their own political ambitions. Clear? So this is the process that has taken place. Okay? चलिए लिख लीजिए इसको. गुरु नानक, write down. Guru Nanak's bhakti, Guru Nanak's bhakti was also influenced deeply by the Nath Panth and Sufism. The Nath Panth and Sufism. Full stop. He adopted concepts such as Shabad, and Sunya, sound and emptiness. Full stop. Next point. Similarly, comma, he also adopted the ideas and writings of the Chishti Sufi saint Baba Farid. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. Guru Nanak was a firm believer in monotheism, which stood for belief in an all powerful, ubiquitous, timeless, and formless creator. Sub point. As such, इसी में ही सब पॉइंट लिखो. As such, comma, in the eyes of Guru Nanak, all human beings irrespective of their caste, religion, race, gender, or nationality, or nationality. Caste, gender, race, religion, nationality were one and the same. Were one and the same. Next subpoint. This Catholic or universal approach, this Catholic or universal approach was the reason behind Guru Nanak's emphasis on tolerance, universal brotherhood, peaceful coexistence, and love, ठीक है. Next main point. Apart from Nath Panth and Sufism, Guru Nanak was also responding to the prevailing social problems. Full stop. Like Kabir, he was not simply a religious reformer. He was also a practical social reformer. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट लिखो, सब पॉइंट लिखो. The main problems he was trying to address included A, B, and C. A, address included A, Hindu-Muslim hostility. B, caste-based discrimination. And C, the poor treatment and condition of women. ठीक है. Next point. Since the root cause, since the root cause of all these problems was religious orthodoxy, Guru Nanak emerged as a natural opponent of both Brahmanical and Islamic orthodoxy. Full stop. Subpoint. He rejected religious ritualism, including idol worship, pilgrimage, or sacrifice, Full stop. Instead, he emphasized upon the importance of purifying the mind and soul. Purifying the mind and soul. ठीक है, अगला सब पॉइंट लिखो. He also rejected caste and religious distinctions, emphasizing upon the equality of all. Next sub point. His reformative attitude is also reflected in his rejection of the infallibility of religious scripture. Scripture. ठीक है. Next sub point. Further, Guru Nanak also rejected the caste-based restrictions on occupation. Full stop. Like Saint Kabir, he also rejected the idea of renunciation and emphasized upon maintaining a proper balance between worldly and spiritual life. Worldly and spiritual life. As a result, he placed a great degree of importance on family life and structure. Within which he argued for the equality of men and women. For the equality of men and women. Okay. Next main point. Guru Nanak was distinct from other Nirguna Bhakti saints. Was distinct from other Nirguna Bhakti saints. Full stop. While others emphasized upon individual spiritual realization to attain salvation, comma, Guru Nanak introduced the concept of individual की जगह पर collective realization. Concept of collective realization. Collective realization. ठीक है? Full stop. This manifested itself in the form of a distinct religious community known as the Sikhs. Full stop. सब पॉइंट लिखो. Guru Nanak also introduced the institution of the Sikh Guru, thus ensuring the continuity and unity of the Sikh community. Next subpoint. Later, the fifth Sikh Guru, Guru Arjan Dev, gave a textual favor to the Sikh religion, by composing the Adi Granth, which later took the shape of the Guru Granth Sahib. Took the form of the Guru Granth Sahib. Full stop. Next subpoint. In the context of growing animosity and conflict with the oppressive feudal Mughal state, feudal Mughal state, comma, the egalitarian Sikh community was militarized when Guru Gobind Singh established the Khalsa. खालसा कौन है? A community of Sikh warriors. ठीक है? Within brackets you can write Sikh warriors. Sikh warriors. Full stop. Next point. Finally, the practice of nominating human gurus was ended and Guru Granth Sahib was declared to be the perpetual guru by Guru Gobind Singh. Okay. Next main point लिखो. These developments were responsible for the emergence of Sikhs as a major political power towards the late medieval age. Full stop. Next main point. However, the basis of Sikh communal and political unity was not simply religious affiliation. ठीक है? That means Sikhs were united not simply because they shared the same religion. There were other factors which were adding to the adhesiveness, the cohesiveness of the Sikh community. क्या है ये? The feeling of equality as a result of these institutions and the feeling of cultural distinctiveness because of the use of Punjabi language. ठीक है? So write down. Cohesiveness among Sikhs was also the result of Sikh egalitarianism and their distinct linguistic identity. Subpoint. as a remedy to caste and religious distinctions, comma, Guru Nanak emphasized upon the importance of community bonds based upon the principle of community bonds based upon the principles of equality and mutual respect. Equality and mutual respect. Full stop. Next point. Thus, he introduced the practice of langar, within brackets you can write community dining, based upon the concepts of sangat, that is collectiveness, and pangat, that is equality. Pangat comes from the Sanskrit word pankti, which means row, right? So everybody would be sitting in the same row irrespective of their socio-economic status. And sangat means togetherness, collectiveness, that everybody will eat together irrespective of their social background, irrespective of their religious identity. Clear? क्या लिखा है अभी आपने? Collectiveness and pangat equality. This fostered an egalitarian social order that was distinct from the prevailing Islamic and Brahmanical orthodoxy. Full stop. Next point. Sorry, next main point. Secondly, Guru Nanak popularized the use of Punjabi in place of Sanskrit to increase the popularity of his message. As a result of his message, full stop, as a result, comma, it is not surprising that his followers gradually assumed a distinct regional and linguistic identity. ठीक है? नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. फाइनली Guru Nanak's insistence on maintaining a healthy balance, between spiritual and material life, made it a priority for his followers to pursue material growth as well. ठीक है. And when the Sikhs came into contact with the oppressive Mughal feudal order, what were they, or in which field did they feel this oppression the most? मुगल जो फ्यूडल लॉर्ड्स थे, जागीरदार थे, वो क्या फोर्स कर रहे थे इन पेजेंट्स को करने के लिए? ज्यादा टैक्स देने के लिए. So their material life was being harmed, and thus the balance between spiritual and material life was being disturbed. ठीक है. So this also led to a reaction from the Sikh community collectively against the Mughals. So इससे भी आप लिंक कर सकते हो that why the Sikhs were ultimately able to create their own state in the region of Punjab. Full stop. Consequently, when the Mughal feudal order began exploiting the Sikh community economically, resistance was endemic. ENDEMIC. Resistance was endemic. ठीक है. तो ये हो गए सेंट कबीर एंड गुरु नानक. Next, what do we have to see? The contributions of निर्गुण भक्ति. ठीक है. But before we discuss this, 2 minute का break. Sorry about that and thank you for your patience. हाँ. Next, we have to talk about the contributions of निर्गुण भक्ति. तो बताइए क्या कंट्रीब्यूशन किस फील्ड में हम देख सकते हैं? सोशल फील्ड में और कल्चरल फील्ड में. ठीक है. इकोनॉमिक फील्ड में, यस, इकोनॉमी में भी देख सकते हैं. तो when it came to social contribution, what is the chief thing to remember? It represented social radicalism. Why? Because it opposed the established norms of the society, the Brahmanical and Islamic orthodoxy, which stood for discrimination, restriction, bounding of the critical thinking of the masses, the you can say bondage of the lower sections of the society into a status of perpetual slavery almost. तो वहां पर their contribution was the introduction of social radicalism. Write down. Nirguna Bhakti promoted social radicalism promoted social radicalism by attacking religious orthodoxy, and thus seeking to upend UPEND to upend existing social norms. Full stop. Subpoint. Nirgun saints such as Kabir and Guru Nanak apart from being spiritual reformers were also social reformers. ठीक है ना। उन्होंने किस चीज को एड्रेस करने की कोशिश करी? सोसाइटी को डायरेक्टली या फिर रिलीजन को अफेक्ट करने की कोशिश करी? दे रिजेक्टेड religious practices such as ritualism, idol worship, etc. Right? But what was the indirect result of this? It also brought about social reforms. क्यों? क्योंकि इन्हीं रिचुअल्स और प्रैक्टिसेस के बेसिस पर कई सारे सोशल डिविजन्स बेस्ड थे. दिस वाज द बेसिस फॉर डिस्क्रिमिनेशन. So write down. Next point. By challenging established religious ideas and practices, they indirectly prepared the grounds for social reform. By prepared the ground for social reform, not by, since many social divisions and practices were based on these rituals. Full stop. Next point. It is due to this fact that Kabir is often characterized as क्या बोलते हैं कबीर को? Martin Luther of 15th century India. The Martin Luther of 15th century India. Who was Martin Luther? The leading figure in the Reformation movement in the Catholic Church in Europe. ठीक है, तो जिस तरह के चेंजेस वो लेकर के आए यूरोपियन सोसाइटी में, सिमिलरली कंपेयर किया जाता है सेंट कबीर को. क्लियर? नेक्स्ट. They also made a major economic contribution. कैसे? How? By rejecting renunciation first of all, and secondly by breaking the association between caste and craft. ठीक है, write down. Nirgun Bhakti also made an important contribution towards economic growth. Sub point. By rejecting renunciation or asceticism, they encouraged their followers to remain associated with productive activities. Okay? To remain associated with productive activities. Sub point. For example, Saint Kabir continued weaving even after becoming a preacher. Full stop. Next sub point. Further, they also encouraged production by breaking the relationship between caste and craft. Full stop. Sub point. They encouraged the phenomena of Varna Samkar. वर्ण समकार का मतलब क्या होता है? इंटरमिक्सिंग ऑफ वर्णास. वर्ण समकार by encouraging their followers to pursue crafts beyond the ones prescribed for them. ठीक है? अगला पॉइंट लिखो. हाँ, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट. थर्ड, कल्चरल कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस. किस तरह के कल्चरल कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस? डेवलपमेंट ऑफ लोकल लैंग्वेजेस एंड लिटरेचर, डेवलपमेंट ऑफ new forms of literature such as poetry, couplets, compilation of poetic works, and development of music. ठीक है? Write down. Nirguna Bhakti also made a major contribution in the cultural field. Also made a major contribution in the cultural field. Full stop. In the cultural field. Write down. Subpoint. Bhakti saints did not simply reflect the feelings of the common people, but did so in the common languages. In the common languages. Full stop. Subpoint. While Guru Nanak used Punjabi, Kabir declared that Hindavi was a stream, while Sanskrit was simply water from a well. Water from a well. डिफरेंस क्लियर है दोनों के बीच में? वाटर फ्रॉम अ वेल का मतलब वो खड़ा हुआ पानी है, स्टैग्नेंट है, उसमें कोई डेवलपमेंट नहीं, कोई ग्रोथ नहीं है, कोई एवोल्यूशन नहीं है, कोई चेंज नहीं आ रहा है. ठीक है, इट इज डेड. Hindavi is vibrant, it is flowing, it is continuously growing. Many new things are being adopted by it. Right? तो इस तरह से. Next sub point. Further, comma, Nirguna Bhakti also contributed to the growth of regional literature. To the growth of regional literature. Full stop. Subpoint. Guru Nanak composed several original Punjabi songs and verses. Songs and verses. While Kabir introduced several forms of Hindavi poetry, including Sakhi, Ramniya, etc. Sakhi, Ramniya, etc. ठीक है. सखी, रमनिया, उलट बासी ऑल्सो सुना होगा आपने. उलट बासी एटसेट्रा. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट लिखो, मेन पॉइंट. इन द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ म्यूजिक, Nirguna Bhakti also made an important contribution. Full stop. Sub point. Guru Nanak introduced devotional songs in Sikhism and the use of musical instruments such as the rabab, rabab stringed instrument होता है एक rabab, ठीक है. So even now devotional singing is part of Gurudwara's life. तो वहां पे आप देखते होगे कि almost constantly वो I'm not being able to remember the exact word, but वो devotional singing चलता रहता है, भजन वगैरह चलते रहते हैं. तो ये तो हो गए इनके contributions. Now the limitations. क्या limitations आपको दिख रहे हैं? What were they working towards? Religious reform or towards social reform? How did they view themselves? As religious reformers. ठीक है? And thus, social reform, although what was important to them, would never emerge as the top priority. ठीक है? And thus, could they bring any structural change in the structure of the society, any fundamental change in the structure of the society? लॉन्ग लास्टिंग चेंज ये लोग ला पाए? नहीं ला पाए. ठीक है? Secondly, since both of them, or since all the Nirguna Bhakti saints were guided by their own inner spiritual realization and personal experiences, was their ideology or was their reformative agenda based on any rational thoughts, rational ideas, या फिर spiritual ideas? Spiritual ideas ही थे. So while spiritually they could attack the religious orthodoxy within Brahmanism and Islam, they could not do so ideologically. ठीक है? And thirdly, if we are comparing the Nirguna Bhakti movement of 15th century to the Protestant movement in Europe, Reformation or Protestantism से compare किया है, तो while the Protestant movement successfully destroyed European feudalism and created the space for the emergence of capitalism, was Nirguna Bhakti successful in bringing such a change? Able to bring such a change? No. So it could not effect a similar change in the Indian society, in the Indian context. लिख लीजिए इसको जल्दी से. These are the limitations. Write down. Although it is true that Nirguna Bhakti made an attack on prevailing rituals and tradition, on prevailing rituals and traditions, comma, they were unable to bring any radical change in the religious or social structure. Next point. They were essentially spiritual leaders. They were essentially spiritual leaders. Thus, their ideas and reformative programs were also dominated by their spiritual realization. Full stop. Spiritual realization is not full stop, and not by any rational ideology. Thus, they failed to provide a viable alternative to the orthodox Brahmanical and Islamic orders. The orthodox Brahmanical and Islamic orders. The orthodox Brahmanical and Islamic orders. Right? ठीक है. Next point लिखो. Unlike the Protestant movement of Europe, which destroyed feudalism and prepared the way for capitalism, Nirguna Bhakti could not affect a similar change in the Indian context. Clear? Question? Critically evaluate the contributions of Nirguna Bhakti to Indian history. Full stop. Would it be correct to equate it to the Protestant movement of Europe? Question mark. 15 words, 15 marks, 200 words. क्वेश्चन समझ में आया है? अटेम्प्ट कर लेंगे? ओवर द प्रीवियस 2 सेक्शन जो लिमिटेशंस और कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस है उन्हीं को हमें एक्सपैंड करना है, 200 वर्ड्स में लिखना है। मेन जॉब इज गोइंग टू बी कि स्ट्रक्चर कैसे किया जाए और प्रेजेंट किस फॉर्म में किया जाए। तो पिछला वाला क्वेश्चन मैंने डिस्कस कर लिया था आप लोगों के साथ, दिस वन आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू डिस्कस। ठीक है, वुड इट बी करेक्ट टू इक्वेट इट टू द प्रोटेस्टेंट मूवमेंट ऑफ यूरोप? तो यहाँ पे सिमिलैरिटीज और डिफरेंसेस दोनों आपको हाईलाइट करने पड़ेंगे। एंड फाइनली क्या बोलोगे आप, था या नहीं था? नहीं था। It fell short of the achievements of the Protestant movement. There were some major differences. That was the result of not only the ideological framework of Nirguna Bhakti being different from that of the Protestant movement, but also because the prevailing conditions in India and Europe were very different at that time, at that point of time. ठीक है, तो इस बेसिस पे आपको डिफरेंशिएट करना है। All right, ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स, सेकंड पार्ट वाला यही है। ठीक है, गुड। एनी डाउट्स गाइस? कोई डाउट्स हैं तो प्लीज लेट मी नो, अदरवाइज आई शैल एंड दिस लेक्चर।